Hello, hello and welcome everybody. You see the virtual room is filling up. Hello, we just take a couple of minutes to give the chance to everybody to come into the room before we get started with today's webinar. And yeah, it's getting fuller and fuller. Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar of the EURORDIS Digital School on Building Engaged Communities. It's good to see you all joining. We'll be starting very shortly. We have everybody online, on-site, online to get started in just a couple of instances. We know some of you are still joining and coming in, so we will just have some instances to come in and to get familiar with the surroundings. We will be taking you a little bit through the technical details of today's webinar in a second. So yes, so we will just get started. Now is the time to just go and grab a glass of water, for example, if needed, and then we will be starting shortly. Maybe Alex, if you want to come and take us through the technical details, maybe Mata, if you could.
Excellent. So hi everybody, I was going to say either good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because this is a very global event, which is great. So yeah, hello everybody. I'm just going to explain before we go into other details, because we have this question quite often. The presentations recording of this webinar is going to be shared with all of you who are attending this webinar. Thanks, Marta, for sharing the screen. You can see that we are going to be using the chat window and the Q&A box. The Q&A box, well, as the name says, is really for the questions. We will cover those at the end of today's sessions. We have up to 2 hours to do the whole webinar, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe we finish a bit earlier. It depends on how many questions you have, of course. In the chat, please do not ask questions there, because you will see that there are many comments just to interact with each other, so we cannot really monitor the chat that much. So if it's an important question for you, please use the Q&A, and you will see that you can also, in the Q&A, in addition to add your own question, you can tap on the thumbs up icon, which means that the question will be more popular, and then we will make sure that the most popular questions, they are at least covered at the end of the session. If you want to send a message, as you can see on the screen at the moment, you can send a message to just the panelists or to all panelists and participants, so everybody can see what you are making your comment on. And we have already one question that we have answered. Well, it's not really a question, it's just for you to have a link already to the presentation. So if you go to the Q&A, you should see already a link to download the webinar presentations in PDF format. We are going to be having 2 presentations, but one is a duplication because it contains notes with really useful materials, so please make sure that you access that as well. And all this will be shared later by us at the end of the session, and the recording probably more in the coming days because we need to edit it a bit. So yes, I think that's a bit the overview of how Zoom works.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So for everybody, I see some familiar faces, some new faces, names mostly in the participants list. So for all of you who do not know me yet, my name is Aline. I'm a training events coordinator in the Open Academy. And I will just quickly take you through what we will be covering today in the next 1.5 to 2 hours. So first of all, we're going to give a very short introduction to the Open Academy and the EURORDIS Digital School. After that, we will have a short introduction to the e-learning course, the Power of Community, which some of you have already started to take or even finished. Then we will have some polls to get to know you a little bit more and for you to know who else is in the room with you. And then we will get into the content part of today's webinar with our speakers, Marta Campabadal from EURORDIS, with Colleen Young from the Mayo Clinic, and with Valerie Slee and Jen Hempstead from the Mastocytosis Society. Then after these presentations, we will take some time for Q&A at the end. So as Alex has already explained, don't hesitate to type down your questions in the Q&A box, and then we will pick them up again after the presentations. So then to start really quickly, just with a very short introduction to the Open Academy, for those of you who haven't been with us at the first webinar of the digital school or who are not yet familiar with it. So the Open Academy it has different schools. So the digital school, obviously, which is in full speed, ongoing, but it has also different other schools. For example, the Winter School, which is more on scientific innovation and translational research. Then the Summer School, focusing on medicines research and development, as well as the Leadership School, which so far is for EPAC advocates active in European reference networks. So these three schools are mostly focused on Europe, but for example, at the Summer School, we do also accept every year 1 or 2 observers from outside Europe. For the different training types we have in there, there's quite a mix which you can see on the bottom of the screen. So there's face-to-face training, not this year for obvious reasons, but then there are also webinars and e-learning. And for the e-learning, so you know, we will get the introduction for the e-learning course, the Power of Communities, but there are also other e-learning courses available on the Open Academy website, openacademy.eurordis.org, which are open access, and these focus more on the topics of the Summer School and the Winter School, so on research and medicines development. So don't hesitate to check them out as well.
All right, so maybe some of you are already familiar with this slide. We shared it in the first webinar of the EURORDIS Digital School. We mentioned in the first webinar that this year's program is split in 3 blocks. So we are just starting today's block with the webinar with the Mayo Clinic and the Mastocytosis Society. And you, as Aline mentioned, we have an e-learning course available for you right now that you can take on your own time. We've developed this course about the concept of sense of community with Richard Millington, who is the founder of EURORDIS, an international community consultancy, and the author of many books about online communities. Richard is an expert in this field and has spent the past decade helping hundreds of companies develop some of the world's largest online communities. The course will cover the importance of cultivating a sense of community and how you can do it. It will give you the tools to identify the different user types and motivations of your members, and will show you how to set up community goals. You can take it for free and in your own time, as I mentioned, and I think it should take more or less 1 hour to finish. It's a great complement to this webinar, and we believe it will give you a solid base to deepen on the concept of creating a sense of community. So yeah, head over to the Open Academy website and enroll the course. We'd love to know what you think of it, and if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear it. And now Alex is going to launch a few polls that we've prepared just to get to know who the participants of this webinar are. What's your profile? What's your motivations? Or what are your challenges? So Alex, when you're ready.
Yeah, that's right. So you will see on your, if you are using a computer, a little pop-up with the poll. If you are using a mobile device, you will see that the current poll is taking over your device. And yeah, if you can please just tap or click on one of the options that you feel that describes you best, then we can share this, this survey with the group and also with the panelists, and then we get an idea of the audience that we have today, and then we can also try to tailor your concerns, comments, questions at the end of today's sessions. So, okay, let's share the results with everybody, and then we can see what to say. So the options were, I manage an online group, which was the most popular with 53% of the votes. Then we got, I participate in an online group with 16% of results. I'm a healthcare professional, just 3%. I'm a researcher, just 1%, and other 26%. If at any time you want to make any comments about, you know, other, like what do you mean by other, feel free to do that in the chat, and then you can interact with your other peers today and also with us. Okay, let's see the next one. So similar, so this poll, you can read what is on the screen, which is, what's your community current state? So we have 4 options. The first one is, we are planning on starting a community. The second one is, it's a recently created community. The third one is, the community is in the establishment phase. And the fourth one is, it is a mature community. So this is going to be also really interesting, because for some of you, parts of today's webinar will be something that you have been already familiar with, that maybe you have some challenges that our experts can cover today, and maybe other of you are just totally new to this community, online community world. So let's see what you said. So, okay, we have an interesting split, but 43% have replied that there is a mature community. But very interestingly, 24%, the second most popular option, is that you are planning to start a community. So that means that you are quite new to this. So hopefully all the concepts will be clear and useful for you today. I think Valerie, Colleen, Jan, I think that this is very interesting to keep in mind for later for your presentations. So moving on, we have a quick one, third one, which is, does your community have a dedicated community manager? So this is a person that main and only main task in the community is actually to manage it. So it's, I would say, like maybe like a full-time job or something like that. That's how I see it. If maybe Marta, that's what, yeah, that was more the intention. Okay, great. So let's leave it for just 10 seconds, because we are getting the results coming in. Wow, this is really, really interesting. It's almost 50-50. So 44% of you said yes, you have a community manager, a dedicated community manager, I should say, and 56% said no. Okay, so that's quite an interesting split. And finally, the last poll for this introduction, just to get to know, to know you a bit better, is, what do you struggle the most with? So we are talking about challenges. What kind of challenges you have in your online communities? Of course, if you said before that you are now considering to create your own community, maybe you still haven't faced some of these, but we believe that probably down the road you will have to face some of these, and hopefully we'll give you really successful examples today with our experts about how they have overcome some of these issues. So we have some of the most common challenges: engagement, moderation, lack of good content, migration to another platform, and others. So same thing. If you want to explain a bit what do you mean by others, it might be interesting if then other participants who are here today maybe they can read that comment and say, like, you know what, that other challenge that you have said, I also have it, so let's try to connect, and then you can also support each other, because we are a big community in the rare disease field. And the results for this last poll was that engagement, okay, so 69% of you said that engagement is the most challenging aspect. So, okay, I believe that the online e-learning course that we have in the Open Academy website will be really useful also for you to see different tools that you can use in order to increase that engagement. So please do go to the Open Academy website and complete the course. And I know that actually 50 of you have already done it, which is great and really, really encouraging. For those of you who haven't yet, please do that after the webinar at your own pace. Yeah, and I think that for our panelists today, also it gives plenty of understanding of who you are and how we can try to support your needs today. Great.
Yeah, excellent. I wasn't surprised to see that engagement was one of the main challenges that we are all facing. And I think we are all here because in some way or another, we struggle sometimes with our communities. We want them to be more active, more helpful, and more engaging, but it's overall challenging. So research tells us that the majority of organizations are stumped when it comes to engagement. The main challenges are due primarily to the inability, sorry, I always struggle with this word, inability to retain members. The most common example would be, for example, people join a community, but they never post or never come back once their initial purpose for the visit has been fulfilled. This leads us to the million-dollar question. How do you encourage community adoption and increase member engagement? And that's what we'll try to cover today. The truth is, the reason engagement is such a challenge is because it's not solved by doing just one thing. A single action is not enough. And as you see on this slide, we've identified 6 ingredients for a successful community, although there are obviously a few more. Whether your community is in the early stages or has been up and running for years, it's never too late to start an engagement plan. So now let's go over these ingredients one by one. The first thing you're going to need in order to build an engaged community is a solid base, a foundation that you can build on that supports your efforts and helps you reach your goals. This base is going to hold your strategy and is composed of 3 factors, which are as follows. 1, an organization with a community buy-in. 2, a present community manager / moderator / admin. And 3, a constant flow of members who have registered. Probably without one of the 3, your community most surely will struggle. Once you have a solid base, you can move to understanding your community. One problem that many communities make is thinking about their members as a whole, as a cohesive group, and then they apply the same engagement tactics to this single group. It's better to know the segments, personas, and personality types of your community in order to understand what drives them. And knowing what drives your community members is how you'll be able to make informed decisions when designing your engagement plan. There are different ways that you can segment your community. For example, here, we could take the activity, which is the hours spent on the community, and it's the most common way to segment the members. And then we could have a chart like this one, splitting our members into, for example, inactive members, lurkers, or also called observers, actives, and super users. And we'll go over their traits in the next slide. So if you combine your community analytics with, say, for example, an annual survey where you ask your members about their participation and motivation, you could end up with a chart like this one that gives you the main traits of each type of member. For example, an inactive member usually never posts, only visits the community because they need information quickly, and might never come back once their once their need has been fulfilled. Then we have observers or lurkers who also come to the community to find information, but they are also interested in reading the discussions and perhaps will leave a response if they are interested or know something about a specific topic. Generally, in many online communities, the majority of their members are lurkers. Then we have active members, who are those users that frequently visit the community to find information and also good quality answers, but they also want to participate in discussions and share their experience because they find that the community is helpful and is a pleasant place to be. And finally, we have the super users, which are the less common type of user. They spend a lot of time in the community and like to offer meaningful responses and make members feel welcome. They like to be seen as a leader or important person within the community. And as a specific trait, super users would probably also be interested in taking a moderator position. So just to finish with this section, with this second ingredient is, if your objective is to increase participation and engagement, you need to understand the traits and desires of your members, so you can target each segment with a different strategy. There are many, many strategies. These strategies might be sending emails to each segment using different wording, or if you have control over the development of your community, you can use different banners or messages that members see on the community based on what type of member they are. The next ingredient to make a successful community are the user interface and the user experience. Both are really important as they will affect the first impression that new members will have once they join your community for the first time. User interface and user experience play a huge role in making sure that your community is an attractive and comfortable place to be. The negative side is that it's difficult to make changes, the changes that you wish to make in order to improve your community if you are not the owner of your own platform. I'm talking, for example, Facebook groups. You won't be able to change the interface of your group. Facebook will always have to control and will make the changes without your opinion or permission. So you'll have to either adapt or migrate to another platform. But there are a few things that you can do, for example. In Facebook groups, a few best practices would be try to make your Facebook groups info more engaging. Add a nice cover photo, customize your group URL. You can also play with the pinned posts and the information you put there. And try to have a clear call to action at the top of the feed. You can also think carefully about the questions you want to ask new members before you accept their request to join too. I don't want to go into much detail about user interface and user experience here because this is a very broad concept, but you'll find lots of information offline that will help you get started. It's difficult to run a community without any help. We all know that. That's why every active community has leaders. Those people who you've identified as being very active and who care a lot about the community. These people are crucial to the success of any community and are usually recognized by being given special status or additional privileges. That being said, there are two types of community leaders that you should be aware of: moderators and superfans. Moderators generally monitor community discussions. They enforce the community guidelines, identify trolls or spammers. They also welcome new members and intervene when a discussion is getting heated, for example. They also share the latest news about the rare disease and about the patient organization activities. And most importantly, they answer questions from the community members. They can also help with the onboarding of new members, and we'll talk more about this concept in the next slides. And finally, they foster this sense of community by encouraging members to post or comment more often. On the other side, superfans are not usually volunteers of a rare disease organization, although there are always exceptions. Super users generally spend a lot of time in the community. They feel a sense of belonging and they care about the community and its members. They drive a lot of participation and engagement by just being hyper motivated. Moderators and superfans, to a lesser extent, are there to help you and your organization create the best community experience possible for your members. They work towards ensuring that your community is a great place to be, and therefore they also play a role in fostering community adoption, participation, and also engagement. It's important to recognize these leaders and reward them for their efforts as much as you can. And I believe Colleen is going to talk more about Mayo Connect's moderators during her presentation. And content, we briefly talk about content in the first webinar. Content plays a huge role in any community, especially when it comes to fostering engagement, because one of the main reasons why people go to a community is to engage with content. That means how it reads, how it's laid out, and how it addresses your member needs. That being said, there are a few things that you need to focus on when creating community content, so that is able to successfully engage members. Here are a few tips. Try to make your writing as clear as possible and don't make it excessively long. Having to reread sentences because they don't make sense is a sure way to get your members not to visit again. Add images to the text. Add short links and not massive URLs. Adapt your message to your audience. For example, a message meant for the newcomers won't be the same as a message for your super users. Also try to encourage feedback as much as possible. So for example, if you share a paper, don't post the link and that's it and forget about it. Encourage people to read it and share it and share their take-home messages with the group. And finally, also ensure that the content reads clearly using short sentences or creating paragraphs, using bullet points, etc. And finally, the final ingredient for a successful community is having an onboarding strategy for new members. Onboarding is a concept from the 70s used in human resources department that has been adopted by many other areas, one of them online communities. Onboarding is a group of strategies and tactics to make new members feel welcome, provide them with the tools and information necessary to get the best out of the community, so they see the value of the community and want to return. There are many tactics out there for a successful onboarding, but I'm just going to mention two that you can implement right after this webinar is over. The first one is to create a good welcome email where you introduce your organization and tell new members what to expect. You can also take the opportunity to share the community guidelines, the community rules, and try to finish with one or two call to actions. That could be, for example, introduce yourself or share your story or become a member of the organization or any other call to action. And then you could also set up a separate thread for community introductions. And you can, for example, pin it at the top or off the feed. This will help members feel welcome and will also help them familiarize with the posting functions of your community. So here we finished the first part of this webinar. We finished with the 6 basic ingredients to make a community successful. We understand that, of course, not all rare diseases organizations have the same resources, the time, the people, and not all the communities are at the same life cycle stage. So it will be more of a trial and error at first. But we encourage you to start getting to know your members, play with the user interface a bit, start creating content that is more engaging, or find ways to reward your moderators and super users. Now we'll move to the second block of the webinar with 2 practical examples that have put these concepts and a few more into practice. Colleen Young from Mayo Clinic is going to present now the Mayo Clinic Connects community strategy. Let me stop sharing my screen. And Colleen, whenever you're ready.
Great. Hello, everyone. I believe you're seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so thank you for that introduction. I run a consultancy for helping people to build online communities, CY Connect, and I currently work at Mayo Clinic to help them build a very large community of over 100,000 members in all different disease states. And I've been running online communities for about 12 years now, and I am a tenacious connector of patients. And so my specialty is really in building online communities for patients or in healthcare. The illustration that is just in the background of my opening slide really illustrates what Marta was talking about. It is actually a social network analysis of a community that I used to run about healthcare social media in Canada, and just the interconnectivity of people, of your super users and your nodes, and then your lurkers around the outside of the community. So important to embrace all types of users. And so I'd really like to talk about today is that engagement part. First, just to level set, what are we talking about when we say online community? So there's many correspondences that you can do online now, but what makes a community different, I think, is this very simple explanation or this definition. It's a group of people who, of course, interact online, and they share a strong common interest or around a topic, but it's that forming of relationships that really distinguishes an online community from just a social gathering, some comments to a news article, for example, if you're following the New York Times and writing comments, or a Facebook page versus a Facebook group. If you're just commenting on the post that an organization is making, that's more of a settlement or a gathering around a topic. But where people are forming relationships, your content is conversation. And that is really your goal is to make that conversation, that engagement. To have that, there are 3 ingredients to success. You want to have growth. So that might be a challenge in rare diseases, but you are having people who have been there with people who are newly diagnosed. It's really important to have that mentor type quality. Someone is helping newcomers. So having new people come into your conversation can be really helpful. And you need to integrate them socially into the social fabric. You want them to feel welcome. So it's having activity. It's really important that you have some people talking. You don't have a community if no one is talking, right? Just having registrations does not make a community. And then when you have growth and activity, you need that sense of community. And Richard Millington has gone in depth about the sense of community in the e-learning. So I'll be touching on that throughout my presentation. But essentially, you want people to feel a sense of belonging and that they can have influence or be influenced by the community. So they can learn, they can teach, right? Or it can be a community of action where you, with the community, actually have something that you're setting out to do, to change policy, to develop research, whatever that might be. So I call these the 3 legs of my stool. And all 3 legs won't necessarily be equal. So you might have a bit of a teeter-tottery stool. You might have more tactics that are focusing on growth. When you're noticing that you're not having enough new members come in, and then your tactics may shift to more activity. So we'll talk a little, we're going to focus really on the engagement part. Why do people join an online community? I think this is really clear for all of us, right? It's because we want to connect with someone like us. We want to be able to get answers to our questions that we can't get from Google, right? It's also just knowing that we're not alone, to reduce that isolation, reframe hope, and knowing how can we live our lives. You just want to better understand your situation and live better with it. And so another take on the slide that Marta shared with us as well is I've made this schema for why members join a community, but also why they stay. So what brings someone to a community is not necessarily what brings them back to a community. So most people enter into a community at these lower two stages, observer or info seeker. So some people will just observe and follow and learn that way, and they may never post. And those are your lurkers. And doing interviews with lurkers, we have found that they feel as connected to the community as other people who are participating. So definitely don't ignore your lurkers. Some may be converted to actually participating, and some may never be, but they are part of your community. Some people then graduate to info seeker. Some people enter as an info seeker. They have such a pressing concern that they want to post a question right away, and they leapfrog the observer stage and post a question. This flip from info seeker to helper, I know you've all seen it, can happen within the same hour, within minutes. Because we know that everyone who comes to a community, even if they have a burning question for which they have no answer, they also have a lot of health experience. So while I may post my first question in a community because I'm afraid of getting chemotherapy, it's likely, well, we know that the person has already gone through the diagnostic process. It's likely that I've already had surgery in many cases. And so there's a lot of knowledge that just comes with those two parts of the journey. So while they're asking questions about chemotherapy, they can probably help the next member who comes in and posts, I've just been diagnosed, what now, right? So it's important to understand that people, while they are seeking knowledge, also are the harborers of a lot of knowledge as well. And then we want to enable these people who are very committed to the community and want to mentor others. They're usually further out from their diagnosis, and really helping people over a long period of time is a huge motivator. And we've classified that as mentor. They post regularly, and they are really part of the moderation fabric of the community. Oh, I went backwards, sorry. So I'd love to illustrate some of that using Mayo Clinic Connect as an example. Mayo Clinic Connect, as I mentioned, is a community of over 100,000 people, and it is really a community of communities. So if I go to the next slide, this is just a snapshot of a few of the communities. There's about 70 communities on Mayo Clinic Connect, largely based on condition or disease, but there's also some that are demographics like caregivers or women's health, men's health, and so on. So it's really a community of communities. I'd love to give the story of how we got started, how we failed, and how we're succeeding. I think that there's an awful lot that can be learned through failure. And so I'd love to illustrate and come confess with you and come clear on that. So looking at these 4 lines, these are really some measurements that we take to watch the trends or what are happening in the community, and what tactics we need to change in order to continue the success. So let me parse this out for you. The yellow line at the bottom are new users, so people who have registered and come onto the community. That's my heartbeat, really the oxygen that gets supplied to make sure that the community continues to live. My success rate is this red line. These are the members who are returning month over month. And that is really demonstrating to me that these people find value in the community, and that's why they're returning. They're either finding help, giving tips, and finding community, sense of being able to influence and be influenced. Blue is essentially just the sum of those two parts, and green are the number of posts that we've had. So let me tell you a little story of what these lines say. So this part, before 2016, we didn't have a community manager. So the community was built, the platform was there, and people were free to start to talk. But if you're not feeding and watering, people aren't. So you can see that Mayo Clinic has the power to advertise and post out that their community exists. And so people were registering. We had more registrants, but people were not returning. Basically, the red line was flatlining. This peak that you see here, that was 3 great webinars that we hosted, and you had to register as a member of the community in order to see the webinar. So people came to the webinar, there was no reason for them to stay, there were no conversations. This spike that you see here is when a dedicated community director was hired and we implemented a strategic community plan. Of course, there was a bit of a spike in new members as we put out a lot of information about the community, but this steady flow of oxygen is really what you want to see. And as you can see, more and more members are continuing to return and our community is building. The number of posts have their seasonal ups and downs, and we know to weather those storms. So it's largely an American company, or community. There's a lot of international members as well. But we know that we have decreased engagement just between American Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then again in the summertime. And we're happy that there's less engagement during those times, because those are times that you want to be with family or you want to be outside and not necessarily staring at a screen. I'll just quickly explain this big spike that happened here. That was actually an algorithm that changed in Google. We are searchable on Google, and Google was favoring us for a while, and then they did a huge algorithm change in March 2019, and our activity plummeted. So some of the activity that came was actually unwanted attention from sellers of CBD oil and such. And so there is a certain relief that we had less attention, but it also meant that we had to strategically change our tactics to no longer be so dependent and vulnerable to changes on the algorithm of Google. And as you can see, we have recuperated and we're back on track to up and to the right. So what is this community strategy? So I'd love to give you a snapshot of what it is and how you can build one. It's really important that you not spread yourself too thin with too many tactics. So really focus on the tactics that work, the tactics that you can put a lot of effort into and make successful. And if they're not working, you can pivot to other ones, because there's many ideas that you can come up with of how to improve your community. So first, you want an overarching goal. For us on Mayo Clinic Connect, it's really everybody who comes, we want them to be able to improve their health and their well-being. And that's in whatever way that they want to define it, whether it be better self-management of a chronic condition, self-advocacy for getting better care and working with their physicians, or recovery from stroke, quitting smoking, whatever that is. And we know that it's not all members are created equal in the community. So we segment our users into those who are active and those who are new. And so that's what you see here in the objectives of, we really don't want to merely connect people of just here, now you're in the same room together, but rather get them to set goals in order to be able to improve their self-management and recovery. But we also want those top members, people who have been there, to respond and encourage and share their experiences. And so strategies are really, what are the emotions that we need to evoke in members to get them to perform what we're hoping that they'll do on the community. So we want to make people feel proud as they improve and show progress, right? But we also know that health is not an up and to the right trajectory. Sometimes we have setbacks. And we want people to know that they're welcome to come back to the community if they did start smoking again, if they did have a setback in their diagnosis and felt like their recovery was really inspiring other people. Reality hits and they should be able to feel that, good coming back and sharing those setbacks as well. That motivation of giving back, that feeling of joy, is a huge one that we also use in sort of inspiring people to continue to help others and make those members who have that experience to share feel confident that their experience is useful and that that's an expertise that is going to help other people. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the tactics that are outlined here, but you can imagine that each of these strategies have multiple tactics, and I want to focus on the engagement and how we do that. And right now I'd also like to introduce my mentors, my volunteers that I have helping me to scale the moderation of the community. I'll tell you a bit more about them later in the presentation, but they are here in the chat room with you as well. Some of them have joined us today, so if you have questions of the Volunteer Mentor Program, please post them in the chat, and I'm sure that John, Scott, Teresa, and some of the Chris, some of the other mentors who are with us will happily answer your questions. So let's get into that all-elusive engagement. So you want to create conversations that people want to join. So what do you want the community to do, and what do you have to do to make that happen? So you, of course, want people to post, you want people to be active, you want them to connect, you want them to post their problems, crowdsource solutions for it, share their successes, their setbacks, updates. These are universal, whether it's a health community or not. And so it's important that you create participants, not just readers. People are always wanting to create content. I'm saying create conversations. Help connect the members and model that behavior that you want to see and establish those habits. So what, Colleen, do you mean by all that? Let's go into details. So your first goal is you want to connect people so they can share their knowledge and solve their problems. People don't join a community because they want to have a link to an article. They can Google too, right? They don't need that. So you wouldn't host a party and bring them into your house and send them into your living room and hand them a book, right? You're going to introduce them to other people in the party and get them conversing. Similarly, you're not going to bring them into a room and have a lecture like we're having now and conduct a Q&A. I mean, you signed up for the webinar for that very purpose, but if I had invited you to a party and had a webinar like this, I think you'd leave pretty quickly, right? So you want those conversations to set the tone, establish those habits that are going to bring people back to the community. So still, what are you talking about? So let's give a concrete example here. This is a post that Dawn made. You can see maybe in her summary up here that she's since made over 46 posts, but this was her very first post to the community. And she's an RN, but she really had questions, you know, like what is life? How can I get my life back after having had a traumatic brain injury? I'd like to parse out the answer that I gave at the end here, or after she posted rather. So first what I did is I acknowledged that I was talking to her. So hi, Dawn. Not necessarily thanking all the time. I did thank her in this particular instance because people had talked about traumatic brain injury throughout Connect, but no one had actually started a conversation dedicated to it. So I was actually, as a moderator, really happy that she did that. But then I tagged several, and that's a really important function if your community doesn't have that. I tagged several members, which initiated an email notification to them that I had mentioned them. And so that right there, you know, I make the member feel welcome because I've introduced her to other members. So she's not alone. She's being integrated into the social fabric. I'm also giving that confidence. So if you go back to that strategy slide, right? Giving people the confidence that their information is useful, to be tagged by the community director that I think you have something to add to this conversation, is giving them that serotonin push, right? That they've got something to say. But then I go back to the person in the room, and this is really important. I talk to Dawn. I first of all give her the leg up that we don't allow people to post in the first 10 days that they're a member of Mayo Clinic Connect, so they can't, or they can post, sorry, they can't post a link just to stop spammers. And so I just wanted to let her know that her podcast was okay to post. I checked it out and I posted it for her. So I gave her the confidence that she had information to share. But then I kept talking to her in the room, and I asked a question to her. So I said, Dawn, as a nurse and an Uber mom, it must be such a challenge. So validation, to accept being the person who no longer has the oversight and everything under control. But she has knowledge. So I come back to her and I said, what things help you find peace with that? Or is that not possible right now? Right? Because I'm talking to Dawn, I know she's in the room. I'm not sure if these other people that I've tagged are going to come back. But I can tell you, as you can see in the pagination here, this has led to a multiple page discussion of over 200 posts in the meantime. And this was the only post that I made. I was the host who brought people together in the room, and then I let them connect with one another. So it's really important to get them talking, ask questions, be specific, discover their needs, encourage that self-disclosure, and don't necessarily default to giving resources or links to other places to go. They just came to your community. Don't send them away. Discover that knowledge, and here in the orange, really all important, end with a question. Self-disclosure, getting people to talk a little bit more. They come often with really tentative, maybe not enough information in their very first post. So get them talking a little bit more about them, because we are allowed to eavesdrop in online communities. These conversations are knowingly being heard by other people, and it's through those conversations that you attract others to come in. Can you imagine Susie here? She posted, I want my sex life back. Before breast cancer diagnosis, my husband and I used to, whoa, is that like TMI? Or is this gold for a community manager, right? She's talking about the tough stuff. People want to talk about the stuff you can't find on Google. It creates connections, it builds those circles of trust. People like Susie are really helpful in online communities. You're looking for them. And having those active conversations really keep your community safe as well. Always imagine an in-person setting. When someone posts, imagine you're looking them eye to eye, knee to knee. What would you do in a real person situation? You're going to ask them further questions. You're not going to turn around and say, hey, has anybody else had sex problems after breast cancer diagnosis? You're going to talk to Susie first, and others are going to join in your conversation. So these are my Mayo connectors. We have 5 moderating staff, and then we have volunteer mentors. And these are people, my 24 volunteers are people who have lived experience and can do things that our moderators can't. Now, you know, your terminology may be different in various communities. You might be admin and moderators. We've chosen moderator and mentor. It could be community managers and moderators. So what the words are really of no importance. But what these people are so incredibly important because they have lived experience. And they can literally sit knee to knee, eye to eye, and say, in all honesty, I've been there. So really important. But not all of them do the same thing. They have special magic powers, I'm telling you. Some of them love to help find resources. Some of them are my welcome wagoners. Some of them are really specific to certain diseases. They really all find their real special sauce of what they can offer to the community. Without them, our community would not be as active as it is. We've actually written a paper, and in my slides, there'll be a link to that paper, actually analyzing the roles and how we work together, the moderators and the mentors. So this is a rather complicated slide, but we do different things. There's different, and Marta also alluded to this. So if you're wanting to dive deep into the different roles that are played between volunteers and your super users and your moderators, I encourage you to read this paper that I've linked to at the end. So the anatomy of a connecting response, what you really want to do is show empathy. You want to connect people and end with a question. I can't tell you the power of ending with a question. Make sure that each action that you make should give members the confidence to either make their first post or come back, to ask questions and return to share their opinions and knowledge. Demonstrate with everything that you do that the community has value, right? It's a place where no post goes unanswered, where people get answers and support. And you want to amplify that sense of influence that Richard goes into in the sense of community. Make a space where people really feel like they can make a difference. So make your community indispensable, where they can find answers and support, where they can get support where they can't anywhere else. In my slide deck, I've left you with a lot of further reading. There's also in each of the slides some notes that are not speaker notes, but further reading. And these are just some of the places that I've helped coach and to build their online communities. And I encourage you to reach out, let's connect. Those are my coordinates if you want to connect with me on Twitter or send me an email with further questions. Thank you so much. And I'll hand it over to Jan and Valerie.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen, very much. You got a lot of positive messages on chat. People are really excited about your presentation and are looking forward to receive it via email with the webinar. Yeah, very, very interesting. And I just want to say hello to all the Mayo Connect connectors that are here with us. If you want to comment something on chat, you are more than welcome. So Jan and Valerie, when you guys are ready, feel free to share your presentation.
Yeah, we can see your slides clearly. So if you want, you can go back to the previous one. Perfect. The floor is yours.
All right. Hello, I'm Valerie Slee, and I am the chair of the Mastocytosis Society. And with me is Jan Hempstead, who is the Patient Care Coordination Chair. And we're going to be speaking to you today about forums for patient engagement. TMS as an organization is entirely volunteer run. We have a board of directors that, and it's a small board of directors of 6 people, and we are a working board, meaning we do all the work of the organization currently. We also have a medical advisory board of esteemed physician specialists from all over the world, and we rely on them to give us advice and to help us with patient issues. We offer regional and local support groups, and we hold a major conference every other year. Our 2021 conference is actually going to be virtual because of COVID, but also because we would like to see if we're able to reach more patients who are not able to travel. We have a lot of patients who are too ill to travel, and we have live streamed conferences in the past. So we'd like to see if making the entire conference virtual will be helpful to them. So on to what we really want to talk about today, the patient voice initiatives. TMS is very dedicated to supporting patients affected by mast cell diseases, as well as their families, caregivers, and physicians through research, education, and advocacy. But the voice of the patient is really what guides us, our forums, and gives us an insight into what our patients' current needs are and concerns so that we can address them. For Rare Disease Day 2020, we initiated a series of patient voice forum webinars, and we requested that patients send in questions on a given topic. We ran this forum every month, and patients would send in topics on their subject, and then a panel of physician specialists would answer the questions in a live webinar. It was extremely popular, and we're continuing to do so. Although TMS membership is free, we do not require TMS membership for participations in any of our online forums.
We have presently 3 forums that our patients can participate in. We have a Facebook public news page, our Facebook closed peer support page, an Inspire Rare Disease forum, and we'll discuss each one of these in more detail in further slides. The Mastocytosis Society, Inc. does allow our mast cell disease community to determine what their focus is for each one of these patient engagement forums. We don't decide the topics for them. This is very important to us that they are allowed to choose this. So our Facebook public news page was set up so that not only our patients, but the caregivers, the family members, and as well as our medical community could have a page that they could go to and get information for all mast cell disease information. Right now we have over 5,000 members, and it was established in 2018. One of our board members moderates this group and sets up all of the information. Every time we post anything anywhere, we post it on all 3 formats, on our public page, on our private page, as well as our Inspire page. It allows member interaction and sharing, but we have minimal TMS moderation. This is really a page for our members and for our medical community.
The Facebook closed peer support page was established in 2009, and we had approximately 600 members for quite a while until 2017. In 2017, very interesting, TMS made its organizational membership free. And when that happened, participation on this page started rising very rapidly. Now in 2020, we have over 9,500 members. So it made quite a difference to make membership in our organization free. People became much more aware of this page. We have 5 volunteer admins who moderate this group 7 a.m. until midnight, sometimes a little later if they're up. And we have 3 screening questions which must be answered in order to be approved to join the group. There are clear written guidelines posted for all members, and if anyone violates the guidelines, they are removed from the group, which is always a challenge for us. This is a very busy page. We have new members joining daily. We have patients go to this page not so much for medical advice, but to say things like, I had to give epinephrine again, you know, I'm feeling lost, you know, please pray for me or please help me. And it's not unusual for somebody to get 56 responses within an hour. So there's a tremendous amount of patient engagement on this page. The screening questions for peer-to-peer support they have to answer 3 questions in order to be approved. The first question is that the TMS support group is not for specific medical questions. Those may be asked more securely at tms.inspire.com, okay? Will you read our TMS description and rules in the files sections of our Facebook page and agree to put all photos of rashes, wounds, etc. in the comments section in order not to trigger anyone? Yes or no? Have you joined TMS for free to receive all of the latest updates at tmsforcure.org/membership? Yes or no? So once they've answered these questions, then we can approve them. And then we go on. Now, if they answer 2 of them and they say they haven't joined TMS yet, that's fine. I mean, we don't require them to join TMS to be approved for the page, but we do want them to look at these questions, and then we move on.
Inspire Rare Disease Forum was started in 2018, and we presently have over 2,500 members. This allows an anonymous profile, and it protects their patient privacy a little more. It's professionally moderated 24/7 by Inspire staff, which was one of the really attractive features about it. Right now, I'm the only full-time RN from TMS that moderates it, but I do moderate daytime Monday through Friday. We knew that transitioning from Facebook to Inspire might be a little bit difficult for our members because our Facebook page had been in existence for a very long time. So we wanted the process to be as seamless as possible. So we started by announcing on both Facebook pages, both our public page and our private our peer-to-peer support page, well in advance, and through our constant contact email to our members early in this process. So we explained the reason for the transition. And the main reason for the transition was that because Inspire had this ability to have an anonymous profile and other features that I'll describe in future slides, that the medical information was a little more secure. And we wanted our members to feel more comfortable sharing that information. So we explained the reason for that, and we started announcing early. And then we gave weekly updates, well in advance, weekly updates. Inspire also provided us with these lovely graphics and social media announcements that we could post. Our admins on our Facebook closed group would give regular reminders to post all the medical questions on Inspire, and we gave the link to Inspire. And Inspire provided a question and answer webinar so that we could post it on our website. Patients were a little concerned about would they be able to navigate Inspire? Was it something that was different? And people are always concerned about change. So they did a very clear, easy Q&A webinar for us. We also list Inspire first on our TMS website under our online support communities, just so it's the first thing that they see. Inspire functions is the ability for a rare disease community to select as many subtopics as needed. Even though we get to choose the subtopics, the members still get to choose what they want to talk about. So for us, as Marta mentioned, being able to segment things, there are several different variants in our rare disease. So members like to talk about their own variant. So we segmented it into the different subtopics. So for systemic mastocytosis and mast cell activation syndrome and cutaneous. So we gave them the ability to pick that particular variant for their disease. We also gave them the options of talking about emergency room difficulties and TMS announcements, for men-only conversations, for women-only conversations. But then again, they were also able to discuss whatever they want to. There's also a very large visible donate button for TMS, which is certainly nice. There's a link to TMS website and any other resources that you choose. There's the ability to private message to other members or to the moderator. There's ability to request friends, just like there's on Facebook, only you can request friends within Inspire, and not only within your own community, but within other rare disease communities. And there's also a find members bar across Inspire so that you can find anybody across all of the rare disease communities. And also Inspire now has a mobile app, which makes it very user-friendly. Next. Facebook and Inspire similarities. So both of them offer caregiver support, education, and community, because we wanted something that was similar so that people would easily be able to transition. They both offer opportunities for patient and caregivers to go to our website for update for education and research information as well. They certainly encourage that emotional connection that's so, so important for our patients and our caregivers. They both allow members to decide what topics to discuss. We don't ever want to be the drivers. We think it's so important for them to decide what's important for them to discuss. It also allows moderation, because we want all of our forums to be a really safe place for them to go. We want them to be really comfortable. And it also is available on all devices. Right now we have, we get our analytics all the time, and more than double of our community are on mobile devices. So it's really important to us that they're available on all devices.
So, what are the differences in the ways that the two online patient caregiver support groups function in terms of patient caregiver engagement? The Facebook closed support group, the peer-to-peer support group's main function is support and education, not providing answers to specific medical questions. Although medical questions do come up every day, but rather than an RN like Jan or myself answering them, they're answered by their peers. RN moderation, I only interfere and give an answer if it's an emergency. If I see someone say, all of a sudden, my throat feels like it's closing, I don't wait for a peer to respond to them. I will intervene immediately. Or if I or another administrator identifies that the response given is in fact dangerous, like someone suggests drinking bleach, for example, then I would immediately intervene and say, this is not safe. Please disregard this information, we'll delete it. But those are the two instances. Otherwise, we sit back, we let the peer-to-peer discussion take place, and we only interfere if we see that somebody is being bullied, if there's inappropriate language. And sometimes I intervene just to reset the tone. We always want this page to be a safe harbor. We want it to be affirming. We want patients to feel like they're doing a good job helping each other on this page, and that's very important to us. All the moderators are very positive, and sometimes it just takes a simple word to get people back on track in terms of feeling that they are helping each other. So we're very careful not to intervene too much, but when we do, those are our objectives. Facebook is a great forum for connectivity because many patients and caregivers are already on Facebook and have existing accounts. Because they use their own names, long-term friendships develop and continue into local support group meetings and TMS annual conferences, building a strong mast cell disease community. This is something that I can't even describe how wonderful this is, to see patients who have been communicating online for years and only know someone by name and then come to a TMS annual conference and spot somebody's name tag across the room and say, oh my gosh, I finally meet you in person, and there's always lots of tears. So both of these support groups, but I am the one responsible for the Facebook closed peer-to-peer support group, and this is the one that people tend to use their names. So this does help build a very strong mast cell disease community. It also allows cross-postings in and from other Facebook groups. There are many Facebook groups for mast cell diseases. Some of them are for specific reasons, like a mast cell disease prayer group, a mast cell disease blog, a mast cell disease photography group, a mast cell disease craft group, and they're able to interact with them. And again, privacy settings are available on this as well.
Our number one main focus when we started our Inspire Rare Disease Forum was for answering medical questions and for education, because we wanted to have that increased level of privacy. That was our number one focus. We wanted a safe place for members to be able to post questions. And so that was really our number one reason. But of course, engaging the patients and being able to identify their needs and concerns is also extremely important for us. When the members come to Inspire, they typically do post the questions because they are aware that there is a nurse there Monday through Friday during the day to answer these questions. So they'll post their question, they get their answer. But once I answer their question, I always leave with a question. You know, I respond to them, and I do link to our website because that's where our medical advisory board obviously has assisted us with giving us the most appropriate answer for this rare disease. But I always end with a question, and I engage the community by saying, this is the medical response, but who also experiences this, and how do you manage this? Because I feel it's so important for others in the community to share their experiences. Also, everyone on our board has a mast cell disease, and everyone in our community knows that. So they will ask me how I personally deal with it as well, and I always respond as a patient, because obviously not as a nurse. So it's really important for them to know that I have empathy because I also have the disease. The lovely thing about Inspire is that they have that 24/7 staff that moderates, and they take care of all the spam, they take care of all the bullying, they take care of all the inappropriate things. I never have to worry about that as a moderator. So that is a lovely part of Inspire that, you know, unfortunately, Val and her admins have to always monitor that kind of activity. Because of anonymity, it's such a safe place. On the internet, nothing is 100% secure. We know that. The internet is never totally secure. But because of that level of anonymity, the members have that ability to post more securely. They're encouraged not to use their real name, not to use their email address as their username, so they make up an anonymous name so no one knows who they are. And then there are other privacy settings as far as their profile as well. You can post only to members, only to your Inspire friends, or if you want, you can post publicly, which can be seen publicly, but there are a lot more ability to be much more secure. So this, again, allows your medical information not to be shared or seen. And as well as you can connect to all the other rare disease communities, and there are hundreds of rare disease communities, and many patients with mast cell disease have other comorbid conditions. So it allows this cross-posting, which is very advantageous for us as well.
So what are some future plans that TMS has for expanding the patient caregiver engagement? One thing we're doing is increasing our Twitter postings. We have a Twitter account. For a long time, we didn't post very often, but our advocacy committee is now posting much more regularly, and we plan to increase that. We are also adding Instagram. We are in the process of interviewing for an executive director. TMS did get a large grant to hire an executive director, and we're very excited about moving towards having paid staff after having an all-volunteer organization for all these years. We will also be moving, after hiring the executive director, moving into hiring other paid staff over the next year or two. We are expanding our advocacy committee also because we're going to need more of a presence in Capitol Hill and in Washington. We have noticed there are so many issues coming up with the FDA, and also we need a presence in terms of advocating for the drugs that we need for our patient community, some of which got completely taken away from us because they were being used to treat COVID patients. So we definitely need more of a presence when those types of issues come up. The other thing is we have a really strong connection right now with our biotech partners. In fact, I frequently make postings in the form of announcements on our Facebook peer support page about the collaborations that we are currently doing with the biotech industry and with other pharmaceutical groups. So we will continue our collaboration with these biotech and pharmaceutical groups, as well as increasing our collaboration with other rare disease groups and patient-centered organizations. Thank you very much for joining Jan and I today. The Mastocytosis Society is becoming the Mast Cell Disease Society this summer. We changed our name to be more inclusive and representative of all the different variants of mast cell diseases. If you would like more information about our diseases, you can go to www.tmsforcure.org. If you would like to contact any of us on the board, our email is www.tmsbod@tmsforcure.org. And if you have any questions, we can answer them during the question and answer period. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Valerie and Jan. Very interesting conversation. I know we have many questions directed to you about Inspire and about Facebook groups. And I know I've seen that Colleen has taken some questions and has written some answers on the Q&A. Feel free to add to those questions. I may also repeat some of them, even though they have an answer, just to gather Jan's and Valerie's experience on those two.
Marta,
Okay.
can I just add, while you read the questions and then you get them organized and see which ones we are going to cover first, and just to let you know that there were some comments about the link to the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we are going to send them by email after the session. That link that is in the Q&A quite at the top, you can access to it if you are using a computer. If you are using a mobile device, then it's true that it's not a hyperlink, but we will send it to you anyway on email. And also the presentation, Marta's presentation, the initial one, it's been also uploaded by popular request. So if you access and refresh that link, you should also now be able to see that as well. So just to say that.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Alex. So if you have a moment to open the Q&A box and scroll down to all the questions, feel free to upvote those questions that you are more interested in hearing the response. I think we have plenty of time to cover them all, but just in case we spend a lot of time in a specific question, click the thumbs up and that question will go to the top of the list and we can address that one first. So let's start with the first question. Mike Neladan has asked a very interesting one. I've been reading this for a few minutes now. Is it easier to have engagement in an online community if it is a larger group? What do you think, Colleen? What do you guys feel?
Yeah, the answer is it depends, right? It depends on what the goal of your community is. If you're creating a community of a rare disease, you may not have a large pool of people. Mm-hmm. You don't have the choice necessarily. And so remember to measure what matters for your community. So if you want to have highly engaged people, but you only have 50 members, make conversations and content that matter to those 50 people that are going to inspire them to return to the community, because this is information that they can't get anywhere else. Certainly if I get 100,000 people registering for the community, it's going to be easier for me to get 100 people that are engaged. but I would still call that a failure if you only get 100 people out of 100,000. You're not providing value. You should get a higher percentage of return coming back. So it's really kind of a convoluted question, right? It's hard to answer that.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen rare disease communities where there are 100 people and it's a group that is very active, very engaging. There are a lot of conversation and all the conversations have this added value. And I've also seen groups with 2,000 to 10,000 people that they do get frequent posts, but it's sometimes the same questions every time. It's just people, only the newcomers are posting. And they still struggle with engagement, even though they have thousands of members.
It's such a good point. Make a difference between engagement and noise, right?
Yeah, good point. Do you want to add something, Jen and Valerie?
No, I don't think so. I totally agree with what you're saying.
I do too. I think, as long as you meet the needs of the members, I don't think the size of the group matters. And actually, a larger group is sometimes a little bit more difficult to manage because you have so many more members to meet the needs of. So, you really have to be on top of things when you have 10,000 people that you're trying to manage. You have to make sure that people are not getting repressed by the number of conversations that are going on, and you have to make sure that you don't overlook a post that might be very critical. So I think it all takes work.
Good point.
Yeah.
The next one, I think it's meant for you. Did you have any backlash from the Facebook members once you started migrating to Inspire?
Well, yes, because we skipped one part of that story, which was we were considering shutting down the Facebook page but really that was really not our fault. We were getting legal advice and we were getting some legal advice and they were telling us we really shouldn't be having a Facebook page. And so, because of that, we thought, well, we should shut it down and just migrate to Inspire. And our patients and caregivers on Facebook went ballistic. And so, yes, there was a huge uproar. And finally, we decided that Jan would go to Inspire and strictly handle medical questions. And that I and Melanie and Jody and Gail and Courtney would handle the Facebook page, but that it would be for peer-to-peer support, and that I as a nurse would handle any of the emergencies. And as soon as we said that, everything calmed down. And a lot of people are doing both forums. I mean, we have patients that do both forums, and then we have some that only do Inspire and some that only do Facebook. So it seems to be working out very well now.
Okay, yep. That's good to hear. I've seen a couple of questions about the language barrier. I know that we are all struggling with this as rare disease patients are scattered across the world. Marisha has a question about how to solve this problem. She has a problem over and over when sending articles, community statements from industry, new clinical trials information, guidelines, recommendations, etc. Many patients do not understand English and cannot be included in a discussion, even if they want to. They prefer, under these circumstances, to retreat. What to do? To translate full text by professionals, to translate only the summary. In my community, this is the main barrier for patients to have a sense of community.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Valerie.
So this is a huge problem, and for online materials, it's extremely difficult. For physical materials, TMS has a host of physical materials, brochures, a very involved book called The Special Edition for Healthcare Professionals, written specifically for physicians who are not mast cell specialists. And we have received requests from groups all over the world asking if they can translate that into their own language. And we are happy to share the information. So my only request is that they have 3 physicians or other healthcare professionals involved in the translation, just to double check for accuracy. But we're happy to share it. I wish that there was an easier way to do this. And some of the automatic translating systems like Google do not translate medical information well. So you cannot use something like that. We actually have a volunteer who translates Spanish for us very well. She has a PhD in Spanish and does an excellent job of translating our information into Spanish. But you know, that's the only thing that we've been able to do in terms of sharing our written materials. We have talked about trying to put a button on our website that will translate the entire website into, you can get a button that's, you can translate into 72 languages, but it costs a lot of money. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have something to add to that, and two different problems that you're mentioning to the translation of articles and especially research and community statements. Whatever your solution is going to be, it has to be scalable. You have to be able to manage it. Crowdsourcing translation has worked for Mike Evans and his YouTube whiteboards. Dr. Mike Evans has done that, and so that might be something that you make as a project for the community. I love Valerie's idea of making sure that there is peer review of those translations, because we know that that is a talent and a skill in itself, and so you want to ensure accuracy, but that would take an awful lot of work to be able to translate everything. And so you may be able to find within your community volunteers who can write summaries and précis of the important things, and remember that you're focusing on conversation. And there I would say the automated Google Translate does work. It's getting better and better every time. Not all languages, but certainly some languages are, you know, French, German, Spanish are working really, really well. And people are more forgiving in human conversation rather than medical articles and research papers. So if you are clear that you're using an automated, so AI translation, people will read it with that intent, knowing that, oh, that could have been a Google thing that messed up the translation.
I just want to add what approach we do at RareConnect when it comes to translations. So we use different resources. For one side, we have Google Translate for the user-generated content, and we translate all the content across 12 languages, and the admins of the platform have the power to edit and improve the translation. So if you have a few volunteers in your network that speak more than one language, could edit and improve the translations, automatic translations. Then we also work with Translators Without Borders. We pay an annual fee. Yeah, it's an annual fee, but for us it's manageable. So you should check it out. It's a lot of words per year. And we use Translators Without Borders to translate the disease name and disease descriptions of all our communities, because we want to make sure that that content is very well translated. And we also have a few volunteers within our network that help us translate the interface. So we keep changing buttons and we keep changing pages on the website. And once those changes are live, then a notification is sent to all the volunteer moderators, non-moderators, I mean translators, and they help with the translation. But I agree, this is struggle, and but as Colleen said, I've seen firsthand that Google Translate is getting better with the 5-6 main languages being French, Italian, German, Portuguese, and Spanish. All right, moving on, another question about the Inspire platform. I presume we have to find our own experts, as in our medical advisory board, to support the community. Any cost related to set, I guess, an Inspire community app?
No cost to set up an Inspire community, and you don't need medical experts. I think that probably TMS is unusual in that we have medical professionals moderating. Most of the Inspire communities do not. And I think that was basically how we were trying to attract our community to transition over, was by utilizing a medical person, such as a nurse, saying we can answer your medical questions more succinctly if you can transition over to Inspire. But the vast number of communities on Inspire do not have medical professionals, whether it be a nurse or a physician or a medical advisory board backing them. They're basically just rare disease communities who have a moderator, and not all of them even have a specific moderator, but most of them do. A lot of the times it's just Inspire community who is assisting. And it's a format for the community to have for themselves, and it's more peer-to-peer. As Colleen and Val and I have suggested, it's certainly better to have a specific full-time moderator. For us, it was just the attracting factor to have a nurse moderate it, because we could answer those questions. In our community, and I'm sure it's the same in other rare disease communities, but in our community, the medical community knows very little about mast cell disease in the community itself. Only the mast cell disease specialists are really knowledgeable. So our organization is often the ones educating the community about it. So we have thousands of patients always contacting us, asking questions. So that was just our attracting factor.
Yeah, and Jan has used the word just in there a couple of times, but I just erase that from your vocabulary, because your community is fantastic, and the just is your special sauce. I mean, this is really important to distinguish yourself. What can you do? And this, Marta, it sort of answers another question that you brought up, is what can be done on your non-Facebook platform that can't be done on Facebook. So whether it be Inspire, which offers a free platform for people to start, Rare Connect, Health Unlocked, Patients Like Me, Mayo Clinic Connect, these are all places that the platform and the infrastructure for, weeding out spam and some of those other things that Jan said are the advantages to Inspire, and the anonymity to remain anonymous, that kind of thing. So Jan and Valerie and the TMS group decided this is what we're going to do to make our Inspire group indispensable and distinguishable from Facebook, as we are going to offer medical advice and tell them that RNs are there who have mast cell disease and really know what these people, what the members are going through, right? And so it's really making that community indispensable. That may be a similar solution for you to be able to offer, but not for everyone. And as Jan has said, not everyone on Inspire has gone that route. In fact, I would say you're probably the only one, right?
Maybe not the only one, but it's not common.
Surely in the minority. And so look at some of the downfalls or the pitfalls of Facebook. So for me, Facebook has amnesia. The conversations are not archived. They go down, and some of the commonly asked questions come up over and over and over again. I'll use a really banal example on Mayo Clinic Connect. For example, people wanting to ask what are the best hotels to stay at when you're at Mayo Clinic in Rochester. That gets asked over and over again on Facebook groups, but we have an archived conversation that people can go to and read it. We don't have to answer those questions over and over again. And because in the Facebook, maybe Valerie, you can speak to that, and there's fatigue to answering those beginner questions, where you can have an actual, real repository of collective knowledge that newcomers can go and read and then ask their augmented questions, right?
Mm-hmm. There are, but there's, you know, among the peer-to-peer support works so well because there's always somebody that's so eager to jump in and give a newcomer information. And sometimes it's, you know, there's always a couple people that like to do it regularly, but you'd be surprised. I saw somebody the other day that just joined last week, and then someone joined over the weekend and said, you know, I was just diagnosed and I'm scared to death. And somebody joined last week and said, I just joined too, but this group is amazing. And here's what they told me, and completely gave a rundown of everything that a newcomer would need to know. And it was 5 days after that first person had joined. So I think that the peer-to-peer support is really incredible. And then I always chime in and say, you know, for specific medical questions, go to Janet Inspire, tms.inspire.com. And then by that time, a whole bunch of other people have chimed in with, you know, I have the same thing as you, and, you know, who is your doctor? And then they start talking about that. But it's pretty vibrant. But it would be, and it would be nice, and we talk sometimes about having a place to archive stuff like that, but often what we do instead is put the link to our website, and there's such good information on there that the basic information for any disease entity is there, including for newly diagnosed people. In fact, the doctors at NIH tell us that that's what they do when patients are newly diagnosed, that they send them there. So a lot of times we'll start with that, say, go here first, you know, read this, and then come back to us with your questions. You know, what is it that you still need to know? You know, what are your concerns? And then there's always a list of them, and we're happy to answer them if we get a chance. Sometimes the other patients are answering them already. So,
Yeah.
But you know, we're eager to be helpful in any way that we can.
That's good. That's good. There's a question asked by Peter Ashley. I think it's very interesting. I think we've all been there at least once. And it's, how do you initiate an online group? How do you get past the stage where someone signs up and there are only a small number there with little interaction?
So I'm happy to start with that one. You know, there's a number of different things that you can do. It's first really important to know what your assets are, and to actually, and what I mean by assets is, do you already have an email list? How many people are you already connected to? And you actually do start the online group offline first. So you need to make those connections. You need to have your, what I call the founding members, if you will, and make connections with them. First is to find out, what is the purpose of your group? Do people want to group? So there's a lot of questions that you can go through with a small group of people who are ready to build that community with you. And they will be the first adopters of, and set the tone and start the conversation, so that you're never starting an online community that's empty. You need to have, and then soon after those founding members are starting the conversations, you need to have a plan for trickling in new members as well. So I have quite a bit of resources in my presentation about that as well, starting an online community.
Yeah, I guess that in some level, CEO would help with that as well. If the community is indexable and could be found on Google, at least you could get like a small flow of new patients if the community shows up at the search results. Yeah, the next one is for me. What can be done on Rare Connect that cannot be done on Facebook? I mean, Rare Connect wasn't created to compete with Facebook. I think in many ways, we complement each other. Every day we see more and more people who used to have a Facebook account, and because of the latest scandals, or because they don't trust their privacy policy, or because they've seen some sketchy things on Facebook groups, they are no longer on Facebook, or basically because they want to keep their personal life and their medical life separate. And they are looking for alternatives. Rare Connect is international and is available in 12 languages, which is very important to us. It's patient-led and the data is not shared with anyone. So it's your data, it's always going to be your data. You can choose whatever you want to do with them. We only store for example, your email address, the community that you've joined, the location if you choose to share it. But after that, you are in control of your data. As I say to many organizations that reach us because they want to create a community, it's fine if you want to create a group with us. Just make sure that it's not going to grow because it exists. You need to put some effort. You need to give it some added value to make it grow. It can be, for example, your international door, where you can get a lot of international patients that they don't know that you exist. And then you can keep your Facebook group for other purposes. So I understand that people, when they knock on our door, they expect that they're going to create a community and it's going to bloom just because it's under the Rare Connect umbrella, but it's a little bit more difficult than that. But I'd love to, if you have any more questions about Rare Connect, I know I haven't presented the platform today, feel free to drop me an email. I'd be happy to set up a call. And yeah, maybe we can go over your engagement strategy and I can give you some tips and you can tell me, hey, I'm struggling with this, how we can reach out to more patients. We also are experts in finding patients. Yeah, drop me an email. I'm going to write my email address in the chat right now. And I'd be happy to talk to you guys. All right, Alison, hi Alison, has a question. Many ultra-rare disease groups like ours don't have nurses available, and our medical advisory board don't give medical advice to individuals or families for insurance and ethical reasons. Are we being overly cautious, or is this a UK thing? Colleen, go ahead.
I'm happy to answer this one, and then I'd love to hear Jen and Valerie's take on it as well. So you can imagine creating an online community under the banner of Mayo Clinic. Mm-hmm. It was very important that we established Mayo Clinic Connect as a peer support space. This is where you can connect with other patients like you for living with the condition that you have. This is not a place to circumvent the appointment request and get a doctor consult. This is not a doctor Q&A. This is not where you're going to get a diagnosis. And so we really lead by example in the discussions. We purposely choose language on our homepage. This is where you're going to meet other patients like you. And the conversations are, hey, has anybody else experienced neuropathy? And it's not, doctor, what should I do about my neuropathy? And so right away that you can see, this is where I'm going to get help. It is certainly not a place to get medical advice in the terms of diagnosis, right? So I've got this rare thing happening or this symptom, what do I have? We make it really clear that this is not a teleconsult, right? And so I don't think that you're overreacting, and I don't think people actually want to be diagnosed by an online community. But patients have expertise that doctors don't necessarily, and I think I'd like to just stop there and lob it over to Jen and Valerie because you're living it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. One of the things that we have to be incredibly careful about is making it very clear to patients when we are discussing this, is that we are RNs, we are working under an RN license, and that we have to work within those parameters. I mean, I'm also a legal nurse consultant, or was a legal nurse consultant, so we have to be so careful. I always state that I cannot diagnose or make treatment recommendations. And I make that statement over and over and over and over on Inspire. Yeah. So what I will say is, this is standard mast cell diagnostic criteria. This is standard mast cell treatment. But I will never, ever give a diagnosis or a treatment recommendation. And then after I give that standardized blurb, then I link to our website, which again is, the medical criteria. So even as an RN, and I might semi-answer their question, I will never say, yes, you have this, or this is the treatment you need to take. So you have to be so careful. So I totally understand Allison's question and her concerns, because I'm working under my RN license and I do not ever want to jeopardize my RN license. So although I'm answering questions, I am never ever diagnosing or making treatment recommendations to a patient. If they say, can I take this medication? I will never answer that. If they say, do I have this disease? I will never answer that. If they say, I'm having this, and this symptom, do I have a mast cell disease? I will merely list the symptoms of mast cell disease, list the link to the mast cell symptoms, and say, you may want to consider seeing a physician. Here's a list of physicians in your area, that type of thing. So you have to be ever so careful with these type of answers. So again, when I say I'm answering medical questions, I probably should clarify that I'm never ever diagnosing, making treatment recommendations. I'm working within my RN parameters.
And we host live chats with experts on Mayo Clinic Connect, and they don't answer them either. Right? You cannot diagnose online. You have to have a full medical history and assessment. Yeah. Right?
But a lot of times my role might end up being stopping someone who is, who answers those questions as a patient.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if someone is saying something to another patient, you need to take this medication now.
That's right. And that's where I intervene. Yeah.
Yeah. That's when you'll intervene.
I'll say, please don't advise patients to take medications. That is for their doctor to decide. And sometimes I will say to them, I suggest that you contact your physician and talk about possibly looking at the medications you're taking and see if possibly tweaking them might be in order at this time, since your symptoms don't appear to be under control. That's the most I will go to in terms of giving any medical advice.
Yeah.
It's our guideline number one is, you can share your experience, but you don't tell other patients what they need to or must do.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so we only have time for one more question. We'll make sure to save all the unanswered questions, and I'll talk to Colleen, Valerie, and Jan. So maybe we can try to answer them in a Word document and send it along with the recording. I just want to finish with one question about children and children questions. Letitia asks, how do you manage about children questions? In my disease, there are a lot of parents asking questions about their child, and sometimes they post photos online, like the child in the hospital, for example. How do you manage it? I guess that in the TMS Society group, you have those spaces where photos of children?
Yeah. Inspire blocks them. Inspire blocks any of the photos, certainly of children, but anything that is potentially problematic, it blocks the photos. I can look at them as a moderator, so the photos are blocked. As far as answering questions about children, I always request of parents to either private message me rather than sharing the information on the post, or to email me directly. That's how I manage it. I don't know how it's managed on Facebook.
On Facebook, it's a little challenging because sometimes parents, I always advise them not to post pictures of their children at all. but people forget. And in dicey situations, in difficult situations, parents will sometimes post photos of their children when their children are very ill. And so they'll say, you know, please pray for my son. You know, he's in very bad shape, and show their child in the hospital with all kinds of tubes. I remove those.
Mhm.
And then explain to them why, because it's an invasion of the child's privacy. And I'm a pediatric nurse, so I feel very strongly about that. But you also have to recognize that the parents are in a very difficult position and are also very fragile. So I always contact the parents and say, you know, you can please ask for support or prayers, but, you know, please don't share a photo of your child during this very fragile state. Asking questions about the child's care, though, is okay. The only thing I have to be very careful of is if I see a parent asking questions about a teenager that might be embarrassing to a teenager. Sometimes I will just remove those and ask them, you know, to be very cognizant of the fact that if you're asking this kind of a personal question in Facebook about a 15-year-old, it might be an invasion of their privacy.
Good point. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience. So as I mentioned, we'll try. I'm sorry for not being able to answer all the questions, but we'll do our best to send them via email. I just want to share one final slide. And do you see my screen? Yep.
Yes.
So in September, we're coming back with another e-learning course and another webinar about working with celebrities and influencers. In the EURORDIS digital school that we did last year, we got the feedback from the participants that they found this topic very interesting. So we are partnering with a marketing agency in the UK and also with Deborah Spain and EURORDIS to present a webinar about working with celebrities. The registration for this webinar, is open. You just have to go to the Open Academy website and find the Zoom link. And a few weeks before, so this webinar is scheduled for the 29th of September. So a few weeks before, an e-learning course on the same topic will be available. So we encourage you to take the course before, so you can learn the theory before diving into the practice. You will also be informed once the e-learning course is available because you've participated in this webinar. So you will be sent all the information, and you can also check EURORDIS social media for updates. And yes, I just want to wish everyone a nice summer. Enjoy the month of August. I hope it's not too hot where you live. And we'll be back in September. I want to also thank you. Let me stop sharing my screen. The panelists, it's been great. I've been a fan of Colleen's work and the Mastocytosis Society work for a long time, and it's a pleasure for me to have them here. Thank you, Alex and Elaine, my colleagues, to present. And thank you all the participants. It's been very successful, and see you guys soon, and thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.